Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, guys, for a moment, but just before Michelle joins, I suppose I'll set the scene a little bit. The reason we're all here today is to talk about, the value of collaborating and kind of embracing, the power of good food in Northern Ireland, and ultimately engaging with each other, because we're now in a new era, hopefully the post-COVID era, and a huge amount has changed for tourism in that time, especially in relation to the markets that are emerging and the ways in which we as the trade and we as the agencies can engage with people, especially given all that happened with the domestic market in the last 2 years. Certainly people had to really dig deep and be brave and reach out to the markets that were very close to them in the last couple of years. And that bore a lot of fruit, got a lot of positive word of mouth going, and also generated a great deal of content because of the support that was there from the trade and from the agencies. And I suppose it's important to also to look at ways in which the markets are researching now. They're looking at social media a great deal more, and also looking at storytelling and engaging with the people. And that's certainly one huge asset that the North of Ireland has, because of the great slogan that it has, embracing the giant spirit. Captures the essence of the North very, very well, because it brings in community, people, pride and place, very, very much so. And that's very, very evident from the advertising that's out there at the moment. And we were just saying as well, when you've got assets like Liam Neeson and those wonderful voiceovers and, some future work coming down the track there as well, that's really kind of engaging, because it lets people know in the markets nearby and further afield that there's a huge amount to be discovered in the North of Ireland, not just in terms of anchor attractions and sites like the Giant's Causeway, but also in culture and in food. And more people are looking for that kind of immersive experience. And that's very, very valuable. And our objective today is to kind of get people talking, get people thinking about collaborating and marketing together in clusters, and also getting people to look at ways in which they can tell their story and reach out to the markets directly and through the agencies as well. And through collaboration and through working together with major accommodation providers and through the national agencies, it's a great opportunity. And getting together like this on a platform like Zoom creates a lot of different possibilities as well, because it kind of introduces people to each other and gets the whole culture of referral business going. And it's important that more and more people in the industry in the North of Ireland know each other, because ultimately when people work together, a huge amount can be achieved. I will take you through some of what we feel that we've achieved down here in County Clare, which is a windswept county of the Wild Atlantic Way, have achieved over the last 10 years. Definitely a huge opportunity there for the North and the various clusters and regions up there as well. So I'm going to hand over to Michelle, if that's okay, Michelle, and we'll talk to you later on again. So take it away, Michelle.
Morning. Thanks everybody for joining us this windswept morning, as Charles has said. I'm just going to just set a little bit of context. I hope I can share my screen. That could be the first challenge. Just to give you a wee bit of background, as you know, we haven't been able to be sort of together in the same room the way we normally would for the last couple of years. And I wanted to talk a little bit about our food, Power of Good, and where it came from. As you know, in the last 10 years, Northern Ireland came pretty much from undiscovered and unknown to world's best food destination, very much aided by Tourism and I. And working with them, we had our first ever year of food and drink in 2016. And we had a pilot Taste the Island, all island season of food and drink in 2019, just before pandemic hit. But even before the pandemic, I think we realised that there was a change coming, and we could see that there was an awful lot of interest in sustainability. I don't know about the rest of you, but I spent a lot of time behind my laptop during the pandemic looking at the reports that came through, and there was no doubt about it. The pandemic accelerated the whole market forces around growing love for local, the focus on health, and a huge rise in conscious consumerism, which is what really prompted Gary Quaid from Tourism and I and Food and I to sit down just before Christmas and say, what could we do to help the industry face these market forces? In parallel with that, one of the things that we did during the pandemic was our television campaign and social media campaign all around Our Food, Power of Good. This was conceived as far back as 2019. We'd actually, in Food and I, talked about this around the end of 2019. Now, making a campaign during a pandemic is a challenge because we weren't able to go out and we weren't able to shoot fresh footage. But I just wanted to play this again before we hand over to Gary. And the whole theme of the campaign is this thing about we want Northern Ireland to be seen as a region that has food that is good for the planet, good for people, good for the environment. And that's why we came up with the message, Our Food, Power of Good. And it was to link in as well with Tourism and I's Embrace a Giant Spirit. So now, Orla, I might need your help here to get this to play. See. Nope.
You even exit out of the full screen, Michelle, and then click the play button. Play button in the center.
Nope. Sorry about this, guys.
That's right. That's right.
Did work earlier, of course.
Behind that, Michelle, is that image?
I'll stop screen sharing for a minute. Maybe, Orla, you can't find it on social media.
Yeah, no doubt many people will have seen it anyway, Michelle. A wonderful piece of advertising that captures the power of good very, very well. And
I'll come back to it in the next time. Thanks.
Okay. If you want to have a look at that, Michelle, we can maybe have a look at it at the end as well, if that helps later on. And I suppose, will we open it up to people as well that throughout today's session? If you have any questions or queries, please feel free to put them into the chat and we will address them at the end. That's an important thing, that the chat there, just to capture any of your thoughts as well. And the chat will be recorded and shared out as well, which is a good way to remind people of the discussions that took place. Are you okay, Michelle, for now? Do you want to go ahead again, or do you want to come back in? Yep. Here we go. And share sound. Yeah. You have the play button there now, Michelle. Away you go. That's playing, Michelle. We can all see. Yeah. Great. The sound didn't come through on that, but nonetheless, we got the idea with the imagery and the footage. So great stuff. Okay. Are you have more slides there, Michelle? Do you?
No, that's me finished.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Some very, very kind of appetizing footage there and imagery, wonderful stuff, and you know, great use of words as well. And that's to give everybody confidence in relation to that type of content for everybody to be sharing, not just on their social media platforms, but on their website as well. Great linkage to have, and no doubt, great number of hashtags coming from that, no doubt. Okay, we're very fortunate as well to have Gary Quaid. He's going to come in, you know, just in relation to food and drink there as well. Gary is the Experience Development Officer with Tourism Northern Ireland, so he's going to take us through some plans there as well, if that's okay. So if you want to share away, Gary, you're welcome.
Over to me. Thanks very much, Jarlath, and thanks, Michelle. We can share the link to the Our Food, the Power of Good advert in the chat, just so that everyone gets a sense of just the sound and all of that coming together. So good morning. It's good to see so many of you joining us, and always nice to see some familiar faces in the room, shall we say. But what's also great is just the level of interest and really what's our first focused conversation around sustainable food and drink and regenerative food and drink, and how that relates to tourism, and how each of us can all get involved, no matter where you are on that journey. And I think that word journey is really, really important, because I think it's a journey for us all. And I hope that today is just the beginning of a really inspiring conversation. So as Jarlath says, we'd love to have your feedback. We would love for you to engage with us and use the Q&A function, and just get a conversation going in and around our direction of travel. So I know a lot of you in today's call. I'm Gary Quaite, and I'm the Food and Drink Experience Development Officer here at Tourism NI, and we'll be here for the next 90 minutes or so. But we've got a really good lineup of panelists, and just a big thanks to each of the panelists and to Jarlath for taking the time to be with us. But our panelists have been leading the way, really, in their own destinations to deliver insights, to deliver experiences that really inspire and motivate and benefit those all around them. So I'm really looking forward to that side, where I can just relax and listen to Paula and Jarlath and Peter a bit later this morning. I'd also just like to say that I think the team at Food NI have done a really excellent job on the Our Food, the Power of Good campaign. And I hope you all take a little bit of time to watch it if you haven't seen it. I know certainly I have seen it across television, across social media. But I think it's a really great piece that we can all be proud of, and one that we can and should all get behind, because I think it demonstrates the journey that we've all been on, not only to improve the quality of our food and drink, but also that perception of what we have to offer and how we portray that to our consumers and to our visitors to Northern Ireland. And from my perspective, I think as a destination that we've got much more confidence in not only what we do, but how we do it. And today's session is about taking that just a little bit further as we explore some opportunities around sustainability and regenerative tourism experiences. And I hope Jarlath will talk us through some of the language, some of the differences. What is a green experience? What does sustainability and regenerative tourism mean to me as a tourism and hospitality business? So the question then really is, why food and drink? Why is that alone such an important strand of tourism that we're focusing on this morning? And from my perspective as food development officer, is that not everyone that comes to Northern Ireland comes to play golf, goes to a visitor attraction or an event, but everybody that comes to Northern Ireland eats. And that means that every person that visits here is engaging in food tourism at some point, whether they know it or not, or whether they appreciate it or not. But we know that today's visitor is much more cultured, they're better informed, they're well traveled, and they're in search of new experiences that they can't get anywhere else. But they'll also seek out and pay more for those experiences that show concern for the environment and that show concern for the local communities in which the experiences are taking place. And they want to see food and drink from a completely different perspective. So just a little bit of context in terms of what's in people's minds now when they think of food and drink tourism. And I think the whole idea of food and drink tourism and food and drink experiences has evolved massively in the last 10 years. It's become less passive and more participatory. People want to, strap on the apron, they want to get their hands dirty, they want to get stuck in, meet local people, learn new skills. But it seems that COVID and emerging from the pandemic has really shifted those formulas again. And while the need to develop green visitor experiences has always been there, it's almost come down on top of us, I feel, as a result of the pandemic. So that we've got travellers that are much more conscious about the impact that their choices and their behaviours have on the planet. And I think regenerative tourism is the future. And the support in which businesses provide, not only to their local communities, but to their staff and their employees, is really going to come to the fore as we look for deeper and more meaningful experiences. But if we are to do it, it has to be authentic and it has to be transparent. And we'll talk about some of that during this morning's sessions. So Food NI and Tourism NI really are here to help businesses on that journey. Frida and I will hear from Michelle a bit later, but Frida and I are working on the delivery of a toolkit, which we will send out to all of the industry participants after next week's session, which is focused on restaurants and hospitality businesses. And Michelle will also give an update on the Innovation Fund and the marketing support opportunities. So we're inviting you all to be a part of the conversation this morning, and we would love you all to be part of a sustainable food and drink programme of experiences this spring. And we hope that today really helps you get some ideas and some inspiration, and we hope that you will share them with us. So please do get involved and ask us questions, and there will be time at the end of the session for questions and answers, and we look forward to hearing from you. So thanks very much for listening, and I will hand over to Jarlath then to get us started this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gary, and great to hear from you. Great to have you on board this morning, and some important insights there from Gary in relation to regenerative tourism and kind of the kind of desires that people have now, even post-COVID. Obviously, we'll be talking about sustainability as well, but the new and emerging type of tourism coming forward is kind of the management of destinations and the people that are the hosts and the custodians of the destination. Taking the future of the destination into their own hands, which is really good to see as well. So I'm going to share a presentation with you if you're okay with that. And I'll be talking to you a little bit about the Burren Ecotourism Network and the Burren Food Trail, which is based down in County Clare. And I'll be sharing with you some of the experiences that we've had as a collaborative community over the last 10 or 11 years. And no doubt for many of you that are on the call that aren't familiar with the Burren, it's a karst region just south of Galway Bay in County Clare. And I was born here and reared here. And when you're in your teenage years, and I worked in hospitality from the age of 14 in a family business. But at that time, you're thinking of getting out and going to a kind of a more populated place, because the Burren, as you can see, comes from the word barren, an empty place. But all these years later, when we've got many thousands of people coming to see it every single year, we're realizing that the empty place is actually full of life. And when we look at Northern Ireland, it's very similar. And in terms of the talent and the culture and the diversity and the richness of the food and drink offering, and the task of sharing that with the markets lies within the people in this room here coming together and having conversations. So I'll share some of our experience with you. So some of the things we'll be talking about will be who and where we are, firstly, here in the Burren Food Trail, our origins. We'll talk about our structure as well, because no doubt to get onto the road of creating a sustainable and regenerative destination, there has to be some structure and some planning put in place. We'll also talk about the trail itself and how it positions and markets itself. We'll talk about the activity that we undertake on a regular basis, and we'll look at two case studies at the end. So I'm watching the clock. We're doing very well for time so far, so I will keep this to a timely fashion. So ultimately, the Burren Ecotourism Network, which is kind of the overarching group that houses the Burren Food Trail, is made up of about 70 businesses in the North Clare area. And in peak times, as in during the last couple of years, there are about 449 full-time employees and in excess of 580 part-time employees in that, employed by all those businesses put together. And the area itself takes in about 12 different rural towns and villages. And ultimately what that does, it makes us an entity that work together, lobby together, fundraise together, and market together. And I was surprised. I joined them as a CEO 3 years ago, and I thought that the main focus of the group at the time was marketing as a tourism destination. But I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised to learn that the lion's share of the business owners in the network are there for the destination. They're there to protect the product going into the future, and very proud of their own origins and their connections to the place. And as we've said, when we look at the 70 businesses full of talented people that have maybe worked abroad and come home or have moved into the area and brought with them the talents and skills they learned elsewhere. And, that's really enriching. And if you look around the people in this room today, you'll realize there's a huge, a kind of combination of talents there, and networking and working together can get great synergies going. But the conversations have to start somewhere. So what we say to most people when we talk about the Burren, the empty rocky places that over half of the people that operate tourism businesses here are from the area, they're indigenous. More people came in and fell in love with the area, and then the rest just fell in love with somebody in the area and haven't left. So it's a combination of different factors that make us what we are. And that's a very basic map there of the North Clare area. But we were fortunate to be designated as a Geopark back in 2011. We validated twice since that time, but the Geopark designation ultimately gives us a USP and gives people another brand that they can work with. And all of these little things helped to bond the businesses together. Even competing businesses have become friends because of the bond, and they realize, let's not compete, let's work together and market the destination so that we can all do better. And that was one of the biggest outcomes from our being designated and our forming a network over 10 years ago. So we often say that we started out like this, like the cast of the Vicar of Dibley, meeting in parish halls and community centres late at night, working together. But currently, our overall network has a group of 9 directors. We're a company limited by guarantee. We're then divided into subgroups to allow the different types of businesses, be the accommodation, food service, farmers, or they might be involved in food production, likes of cheese or ice cream or distilling or brewing. We allow people to kind of choose the type of subgroups they would be like to be involved in. So conservation advocacy is a huge one. Many people join that so that they can help in conserving and protecting the area. The Burren Food Trail then takes over 60% of the network members, because almost everybody's involved with food in some way, shape or form, if you're in accommodation or food service, that is. Then there's a marketing committee. The talents that people have are put to good use in the marketing committee. So we try to reach out to all the different age groups through multiple mediums. So be it social media, be it websites, be it e-commerce, be it traditional advertising methods, PR, and obviously trade shows. We do a lot of business-to-business selling now as well, even on platforms such as this. Then there's a networking and referrals subgroup, which is vital and something that I would highly recommend to this group here today, that people get to know each other very, very well, so that the word of mouth is still, the biggest medium to encourage word of mouth from people in tourist information offices or hotel receptions, so that every person involved in hospitality around the region is familiar with what everybody else does. And that's a great aspiration, but it's a very valuable aspiration, because as we all know, we love personal recommendations, and we love to hear the word of mouth coming, because we trust that more than anything else, any other form of advertising. And at the bottom there, one of the other groups is finance. We spend a huge amount of time fundraising. And that means that we kind of, as an entity, attract funding in from the various government agencies, the likes of Leader, membership fees, sponsors as well. And what the funding does, and Michelle will be talking about some opportunities there later on. Funding gives people confidence, because they feel they're part of something bigger, and that by them investing their time and their resources, they'll get a return on it, not just by getting to know all the wonderful people around them in the industry and collaborating and marketing together and creating clusters, but also in terms of building a brand. And you've got to remember that there's a really, really powerful brand in Embrace the Giant Spirit, a very vibrant brand, as we'd said earlier on, that kind of attracts people that are culturally curious. But as well as that, it puts forward the image of the people of the north of Ireland being proud custodians of the region, which is vitally important. And that's attracting more and more guests and visitors now because of their interest in the culture. Okay, so, since we formed together, I suppose back in 2011, which is when the Burren Ecotourism Network came together, we've won some awards such as Foodie Towns of Ireland, the National Geographic Award, and then the European Destination of Excellence back in 2016, and then the Lonely Planet Award there for community tourism, which we got in 2021. And ultimately, great accolades to get, but very good for people's confidence, especially in tough times. When you can get an accolade like that, and got a Reader's Award recently from the Irish Independent again for conservation due to the work that we do in beach cleanups and working with the food producers. And all of these things let people know, as small business owners in the trade, medium-sized business owners, whatever they might be, that they're not in it alone, and that working together attracts not just market attention, but media attention as well. And it bolsters people's belief in sustainability, because they say to themselves, when you win an award, there is a future. We have a future in food service. We have a future in tourism. And working together is the key to that, because had we not worked together, we wouldn't have any of this recognition at all. And so we'll move on very quickly from that. Our network and our food trail is built on what we call the Geopark Code of Practice. And in terms of regeneration and sustainability, these 6 pillars that you see here on the left are vital, and they work in any destination. Firstly, working together is a key pillar, so that people are encouraged to kind of come together and basically, put in their thoughts and put in their resources, and have those meetings like on Zoom or in the parish halls, and contribute to the future of the area in that way. Care for landscape means that people take ownership of the landscape, and they take ownership of what's in the landscape, and aim to protect it together. The well understood heritage is that people, like embracing the giant spirit, utilize and take advantage of the great information that's there, at their disposal, learn a bit about it, and share it out with the visitors then through their marketing and through their face-to-face interactions. Vibrant communities means that, as we work together in tourism, trying to, I suppose, sustain jobs and, to kind of contribute to local, initiatives that are going on, tourism becomes part of the future for more than just the people in business. That's an important kind of pillar as well. Strengthen livelihoods means basically that we employ local people and we utilize local suppliers as best we can. And the food service piece of our network is very, very kind of focused on that we try to reduce food miles by working with the local suppliers. And even if that means, as Gary said, if it means charging a little bit more, knowing, how to position that, and knowing that, by, sourcing locally, we're adding value. And that at this stage is meaning more and more to guests as they come in, because they know that they've flown in or they've driven all the way from Dublin or whatever part of the world they've come from. And they're conscious of the fact that, you need to look at ways of offsetting, what you've done to get here in terms of carbon. So they don't mind paying a little bit more for low food miles or whatever it might be. Sustainable environmental management means then, as a pillar of what we do, we focus on managing wastewater and energy as best we can. And for everybody in this room today, you'll realize, if you think about it, you're all on the journey already of running a sustainable business through, having LED lights, for example, or, rainwater harvesting, or, energy saving mechanisms, or using your own machinery at night, or managing your waste, your recycling and your food waste. All of these things are in place already for many of you. And ultimately, it's about bringing those things together into one environmental policy and, improving it then as you go along. And what you'll find is that when you've written down all of the good things that you've done in your business, there is more than you think in it when you see it together in one place or in one policy. And that becomes part of your mantra then and your USP, something that's usable on your website and your social media. And it's important that you take that away from this meeting today, that you're not starting at zero. Many of you already do a lot of good already, but pulling them together in a way that the consumer or the guest or the visitor can understand them and applaud them is a good thing. Generates a common standard. And I suppose our code of practice there is, it's implemented across the destination so that regardless of the size of business, they can all take something from it. And what I would encourage today is that you take from it, the need to have even a one-page environmental policy, taking into account some of what you've seen here. And I suppose, collating resource usage, that means tracking the use of electricity, water, and waste output. And when you do that and put in a couple of different processes and procedures to improve them, you'll find that over the course of a year or two, you become better at it. You become more efficient when you firstly become conscious of tracking them. Okay, so this is a group of our members here getting together, getting their certificates for their code, but ultimately that's a milestone every couple of years where they they kind of put it in a good bit of work and get their certificates, but that kind of binds them together as well as food producers and members of the network. And in relation to regenerative tourism, no doubt, as we'd said earlier on, people are conscious of, the long term, and they're conscious of ensuring that the businesses can be moved forward onto the next generation, that there's continuity. And for the guests coming in, regenerative is such a broad term. Many of them like to see that, I'm going into an area, and many of them plant trees, for example, when there's a wedding booked, or they kind of ensure that the public are invited to engage in the cleanup activities that go on. And like we run beach cleanups, and you could have 50 or 60 people, many of them guests, because they feel if you travel there, you need to help them to regenerate and leave the place better than you found it. So the whole leave no trace principle base, all of the food trail members use that all the time, so that if people are going out sightseeing in an area like this, that they bring back more rubbish than they generate, for example, if they find some, or if there's sea debris coming in, they would pick it up, and we encourage that by providing bags that people use. So they're just little examples. And I suppose in relation to the Burren Food Trail itself, it was obviously formed as part of our overall network about 8 or 9 years ago. And that kind of created the need for business owners to utilize each other's foods, pronounce that on their menus, so that the guest was aware that everything you see here on the menu come from within a local radius. That created more confidence than among the members. There are about 34 members in that at the moment, which is very encouraging. And that group then run a couple of great events every year. So the Burren Slow Food Festival, which is now in its 15th year, that's exacerbated or helped by the Burren Food Trail. We ran it virtually for the last year or two because of COVID-19. And then we encourage the members then to kind of produce conversations between farmers and chefs, or I suppose fresh food producers and chefs, and as well as that, the distillers and brewers, they converse together on camera. We share that out and create a lot of awareness about how they work together, even if they might be in competition with each other. And cluster marketing then is a major outcome of the Burren Food Trail and what we do. So for example, those clusters that you see in the blue boxes there, the Burren Smokehouse, the Burren Brewery and Burren Distiller, that's a great tour for the course of a day that people can go on tasting Burren whiskey, Burren beer and Burren smoked salmon. And what these clusters do, and we have great plans for them this year, is that they give people that come into an area for an anchor attraction like the Cliffs of Moher reason enough to stay longer, and to kind of plan their journeys and plan their holiday for 3 or 4 days, as opposed to a whistle stop through the area. That's an opportunity that's available to all destinations, is to look towards cluster marketing, so that people can say, okay, there's at least a day and a half there for me, or if I'm interested in more than one cluster, there's a week there, there's so much activity. And we have to assume, as we did the hard way, that the lion's share of the people that are looking at anchor attractions like the Giant's Causeway or like the Titanic experience are unaware of all of what is in the hinterland. That's where we take our task list from, and that's where we say to ourselves, okay, we have to stand up ourselves and pronounce and what's available. We have to use those anchor attractions to attract people's attention through hashtagging and through forming linkages with those anchor attractions. And we've been very fortunate that the Cliffs of Moher here are part of the network and are helpful in relation to creating those web linkages, so that people that are looking to have their bucket list visit the Cliffs of Moher or the Giant's Causeway become immediately aware of what's in the hinterland by way of food and experience. And that's a great opportunity that's there for you guys as well. But ultimately, that responsibility has to be taken by a few different people, not just the businesses and the agencies, but also by the clusters coming together as well. And that's where the talent for marketing and the think tanks come through, because they'll say, okay, another way we might target that market would be, for example, if we form a relationship with the anchor attraction themselves. So our food experiences range in size and range in kind of, I suppose, offering. So there on the left-hand side, there's a Jerry doing the oyster experience there in straight out of the wild Atlantic. He's an oyster farmer, basically offers an experience, charges for a tour then, and gives people a tasting opportunity, and great storytelling. But what people love about it is the fact that Jerry is there. He's been the guy that's been there for almost 40 years, running the operation, knows all there is to know about grade A water and oyster farming, going all the way back as far as, you know, the 1790s, when that lagoon was created by a tsunami. So great stories there, and he offers people not just the tour of the farm itself and the kind of the experience, but you get to taste the product. And as Gary and Michelle were saying, that's what people are looking for now, more immersive experience. They're willing to get their hands dirty. And that business there is called Shuck Off, as in, you know, you get to shuck oysters. And there's a challenge. Many people would have maybe 6 or 7 oysters. Regardless, you pay your 45 or 50 euros, and you can eat as many as you can take, basically. Most people would have 6 or 7, but a record was set a couple of years ago at 54. A Chinese lady had 54, has been beaten since, and it has gone over 80 now, which is great. But again, that's part of that experience and the word of mouth that has spread because of the fact that Jerry is there. And it's not just guests that spread the word, it's accommodation providers, it's other major attractions, it's people on the frontline desks of information centres. You know what you've got to do this afternoon? Go to the oyster farm. There on the right-hand side, then we've got forager Una there in the middle. She's a sea forager, a wonderful seaweed experience. And then on the left in the red dress, that's Brigitte Curtin from the Burren Smokehouse. But all of these experiences are brought to life by the people. And that's why we can't underestimate the power of people. Food is, you know, powerful, but people really pronounce that. And we should be more, I suppose, confident about our ability in that regard. I suppose in relation to destination marketing then through food, we produce videos that kind of let people talk to camera, talking about their food experience. And that's something that has become widely available there on social media and through the national agencies in the last year and a half. And the reason we do that, and the reason I'm telling you about that, is because of the ability for people to tell stories to camera, even over the course of 90 seconds, a very valuable piece of content. And not only that, but something that people become very proud of. And as a group of collaborating businesses, everybody shares each other. To go back to Gary's point earlier on about pride, the diaspora of the area can be hugely beneficial. When they see a storytelling video about an experience or about a farmer or about a food producer, they become really excited and really proud, and they hashtag it all over the place. That diaspora could be in many, many countries. So we really kind of, I suppose, latch on to that, and we have found that it's been beneficial. But this didn't happen overnight. Our confidence levels are only growing bit by bit by bit. And as a network and as a food trail, no doubt there have been ups and downs. And there have been times when it was hanging on by a thread, basically. But it was people's belief in the destination and their willingness to conserve the destination that kept the network and the food trail going. And no doubt every single destination goes through that from time to time. And I suppose another thing there is kind of consistent hashtagging, so that we can let people know these are the hashtags that are working best. So we run training programs every now and then to bring new members on board and to let people know, regardless of their skill level, if you're posting or if you're sharing, use this because it ties you back to the area. And the same goes for Embrace the Giant Spirit. What a wonderful mantra to use. And suddenly, when everybody's using it, the message goes out to the markets. They're all in it together. They're all very, very proud of that destination. And there's great collaboration. And it seems there's a very consistent culture of hospitality there. And we invest heavily then in sponsoring our content just to get better reach. That was focused on the domestic market for the last 2 years. And we're now kind of reaching forward a bit further afield, so that we can kind of, when access opens up again, we can reach out to the US and the UK markets and mainland Europe. And we're fortunate that there was a wonderful documentary produced called The Burren Heart of Stone. It was produced by Silver Branch Productions and aired on RTE. It's about the botany and the food of the Burren. but that's being released on PBS in the USA now on the 12th of March. So that will get us a lot of reach as well. But again, we have to ensure that all members are sharing that with their American diaspora. And the same goes for that wonderful piece of advertising that we saw at the start from Michelle. Us sharing that, you guys sharing that is what gets the reach and letting people know that it's out there. Okay, and I suppose our objective then is to leverage our UNESCO Geopark status. We leverage our sustainability message in our code of practice. We talk about that and we target our advertising. The reason I'm talking about that is because if the people on this call here today go back and write their environmental policy, even if it's a one-pager, it's about leveraging that and ensuring that you do it for a reason and for a purpose. You look at your food business and you say, okay, I use biodegradable packaging or compostable packaging, or I only use my machinery at night to save on energy, or I have a convection oven, for example, or I have solar panels, or I engage in rainwater harvesting. All these little things, when they're pulled together, it's important that you feel, now I have something to leverage my marketing with in relation to my sustainability policy. Okay, we have a website there called Burren.ie that showcases all of our food producers and our activity providers and our accommodation operators. That's something that we invested heavily in the last year just to get it up to speed. And the reason I'm sharing that slide is because one of the big challenges with Burren.ie was linking it to cliffsofmoher.ie. And I would say to anybody on this call today that remember, there are big anchor attractions in the north of Ireland that have large web traffic. And it's important that as operators that we become fit for purpose so that they can proudly link to us as well. Great opportunity because you'll find that there are many, many thousands of people looking for things to do in the north. But our job is to educate them as to how long they can actually stay. And as I've said to Michelle and Gary, last week we've gone to the north for the last 3 summers and we still haven't discovered it all, having spent over 2 weeks there each time. A real eye-opener, and giving referrals to people, then seeing them going up and coming back gushing about it is very encouraging. But it shows then there's still a lack of awareness. We learned that in the Burren, and we're amazed. How can you not know about the Burren when you have over 1 million people a year coming to the cliffs? It's because the marketing needs to improve and the storytelling needs to get stronger. And the linkages between the anchor attractions and ourselves need to get stronger as well. During COVID-19, our food producers pulled together and responded very quickly and put out the Burren basket. And that, to use one of Michelle's words, it accelerated the inevitable. So we thought it was just going to be a COVID-19 response. However, the basket became a huge seller for the last 2 Christmases because of gifting and people wanting to send a gift of love from the area. The voucher then was put out as a buy now, travel later. And that was a real eye-opener to us as well, because it showed that by collaborating and by getting people's intellect together, we were able to do these things very, very quickly on our website. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about Burren dinners in a second. The working together then obviously has attracted a good amount of production, I suppose, crews. So you'll see Nevin Maguire there. He's come to the Burren a couple of times and helped us to get on TV. But that comes from reaching out to get the food story told. Nationwide there have come as well to look at what we do in relation to foraging and working together. And we've also had Creedon's Atlas of Ireland come down to talk to us about the history and the Tolkien connection. And then today's show would come down to look at our food trail as well. And the reason they come is because they know that they can showcase a lot of products together, and because they know there's a collaborative story. And that's valuable to them because it's good TV basically. And anytime any of the food producers or those that are involved in hospitality or anything like that win an award or get into the papers, we obviously assist them as a network. There's great celebration of that, and that again gives people the idea we're in this together. We're in this destination together for the long haul. We support each other. That's very, very powerful. And I suppose collaboration came to life in 2019 when we pulled together this great book of recipes called Burren Dinners, which told the story of winterage farming. That's leaving the cattle out on the mountain for the winter, and the chefs then all put in their various recipes together into a book. It's compiled by a great man called Travis Gleason. And I remember the day the pallets of books arrived, we had to buy X amount to make it viable to produce it. We're thinking, how are we going to sell these? But we've printed them, the second and going into the third edition now. There was great demand for them. And again, that tangible gave the small business owners and the food producers and the farmers the confidence. Working together is the way to go. And they felt that this branding that we're getting now is something that we would have never have achieved on our own. Yes, we sourced funding through Bord Ski Wara for that, but members were also confident enough to put in their own money up front to get this produced, and then it sold really well. So again, it's another reason to be confident in embracing the giant spirit and the power of good food, because it's just collaboration is the way to go. All of these things are made possible through collaboration. Two quick case studies just to talk to you about collaboration and working together. First one is Caherconnell Farm and Aillwee Cave. Caherconnell Farm was a dairy farm and a beef farm in the middle of the Burren there. That's the fort that's on the farm, and they developed a great attraction there with that ring fort and started doing sheepdog trials. But their dairy aspect also was kind of next door. And just to keep people in the area, they formed a great alliance with Aillwee Cave and supply Aillwee Cave, who produced Burren Gold cheese with milk from Caherconnell Farm. Visitors love the story about the low food miles and the fact that two, multi-generational families have worked together, and neighbours like that have worked together. And what it does for the area is that people get a tour of the fort. They get to visit the sheepdog trials on the same day that's John giving his sheepdog trial. And they also get to taste the cheese that's made just up the road in Aillwee Cave. And between those two wonderful attractions, there is a long day of action-packed information and kind of experiencing farming in the Burren at its finest. And again, two people that lived nearby and a very isolated part of the world to the naked eye. However, the collaboration has made a great destination within our destination. We're very, very proud of that wonderful 35-year-long collaboration between Caherconnell and Aillwee Cave. So other businesses grew out of that collaboration, such as the dairying and the cheese, because ultimately when Aillwee Cave opened first, cheese was unheard of, but they just expanded it just to make the business more year-round, basically. And then the second case study then in relation to kind of, people that were involved in farming, branching into tourism and into food production. And you'll see Breed there on the right-hand side, Breed Fahy, one of the pioneers of the Burren food trail. And I suppose got into making ice cream back in 2006, which is 16 years ago now. But for so many years before that, they were involved in dairy farming. And you'll see there, the cows there going out onto an island there that they graze on. A staunch dairy farm family that were there for generations, and tourism was not even on the horizon, but they decided that they would get into ice cream production just to kind of sustain the family farm and get the next generation interested. And that has gone on then to the establishment of a wonderful ice cream cafe, which is visited by people from all over the country. And it's a beautiful peninsula. But the fact is that there are 4 of them working in that now, 2 from each generation. And it's just a great story in relation to kind of people thinking and working together. The local restaurants then use the ice cream as well, which give it a further element of sustainability. So that's a quick whistle stop through the Burren food trail, guys. I know that's a lot of information to take on board. We've spoken about sustainability, regeneration. We've spoken about collaboration, which is one of my key messages. And we've spoken about people having a pride in their place and the value then of people working together to own a destination and to latch on to the major attractions within it. All great opportunities for the people on this call. So I'm going to stop sharing there now. Obviously, there will be questions at the end, no doubt. Are we okay to move on or will we take questions now? I think we should move on to Paula because she's next on the list. So Paula, are you ready to come in? Hello? You're just...
Every time, sorry. I would apologize in advance for my lack of anything technological here, okay? So just bear with me.
Wait,
too many birthdays.
We're making good time anyway, Paula, and if anybody has
Okay.
any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll address them at the end. Away you go.
Thank you. Right, so I'm Paula McIntyre. I'm Director of Slow Food in Northern Ireland, among other things. The slow food movement started in Italy in 1986 as a reaction to a McDonald's opening on the Spanish Steps in Rome by Carlo Petrini. But really, for me, slow food, first of all, is not about cooking slowly. It's not about casseroles. It's for me, in a nutshell, it's probably the way our grandparents produced food and cooked food. So using everything from the nose to the tail. I was in America a couple of years ago, and I went to a restaurant and they talked about rooter to tooter. So I like that as well. So, and also root to shoot when you're using vegetables. Everything would have been naturally organic, eating seasonally. And that, in a nutshell, is really trying to explain what slow food is. We formed Slow Food Causeway up here last year. And that was sort of as an organic approach to a lot of the members in Taste Causeway, which is our food network up on the North Coast, really just who were already supporters of slow food, like Brockgammon Farm, Broighter Gold, Corndale Farm. And just slow food, if you move on to the next one there, please, Orla. Thank you. Yeah, so it's a massive organisation. It's global. A couple of years ago, Michelle Shirlow took a group. I think it was in 2014, a group of food producers over to Turin, the Terra Madre Festival there, just to sort of give an overview of what it is. I think there's about at that stage there's about 300 countries represented. In Italy, where the Slow Food logo probably has got the same sort of credence as the Michelin on a restaurant. So if you have the snail on the front of your window or in your product, but especially in the front of a window, you sort of think, right, that's going to be, you're going to have good food. It's going to be from that locality. Our logo, our slogan for slow food is good, clean, and fair. And I think we've been talking, Jarlath, you were talking a lot about sustainability this morning, and sustainable is one of those words now that if something can last, it means it's sustainable. In regards to food, we've got lots of examples. Maybe if you've moved to the next, please, Orla, the next. Yeah, so just we've done that there. So that's just about it. We're seeking to connect consumers with food and agriculture. And I think there is a bit of a gap, especially with young people now, but where the food actually comes from. So that's one of the things that we want to do. And when we talk about sustainability, sustainability now is one of those words that's bandied around a lot in the way that local was. And I think we need to be careful that local now has become like a marketing thing and doesn't really mean anything anymore, except in certain circles. And I think with sustainability, it's the same. We need to be careful that sustainability is what it is, and and it has to be that good, clean, and fair. So if you move on to the next wee one, please, Orla, thank you. So this one here, I mean, this is this slide is one that I've been using for quite a while, and we've never spent so little on food. I mean, that it shows you how old it is. And yet we believe food is ever more unaffordable. And we spend more on eating out alcohol and tobacco than food for the home, and more money spent on advertising dog food than fruit, vegetables, and public health. Now, I know that Food NI are involved in the Eating Vegetable campaign. There's definitely, but at the moment with food prices going up and energy prices going up, that sustainability has never been more important. And if you have a business, probably the most important, obviously, is about profit. But if you source locally and seasonally and take that whole thing of nose to tail and root to shoot, it will help your profit. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for, apart from the love of doing it. But we have to, and for our businesses to be sustainable, we have to make money. And I think that's one of the things that is so important is cutting back on waste, eating seasonally, properly eating seasonally, and thinking about air miles with our food. I mean, one of the things that if we move on to the next one, and I think a really good example. So this was the Arc of Taste. So again, that's food. This is our slow food protecting food. So foods that are endangered. Dan Saladino, who's the presenter and producer of the food program, brought out a book recently there called Eating to Extinction. And if you're interested in food, it's an amazing book. But there's a lot of Arc of Taste products. Our Arc of Taste product in Northern Ireland is dulse and also corned beef. So two old heritage, products that are sustainable as well. So if we move on to the next one, please. So this is the Cole family. To me, they're doing everything slow and sustainable, and it's a very small working farm. And again, in our grandparents' days, we didn't have massive big farms. There would have been small farms. I think the Brockgammon farm is about 45 acres, and yet it's sustaining 2 families. They farm billy goats and male calves, which would naturally be a waste product from the dairy industry. So they normally end up being destroyed, but instead they're using it for the calves and the goat for goat meat. And to produce meat, they have an in-house butchery where they're doing they do classes at the butchery. They do farm tours, lots of children, lots of people coming and seeing the goats and seeing how food is. They have a farm shop, they have a cafe. Becky Cole there on the left, she does foraging tours. They've started to grow vegetables now. They sell their meat at markets in Belfast and Dublin. And they have a food truck that sells billy burgers. So those are burgers made from the goat meat. And I think it was in 2017, they won the British Street Food Best Snack for their goat offal taco. So a waste product nearly of goat, which is a waste product, and made into an award-winning taco, which I've tasted and it was absolutely beautiful. If we move on to the next one, then another sustainable product. This is Kate Burns from Islander Kelp. So they farm kelp off the coast of Rathlin. They make it into they cook it. They cook the kelp and then they cut it with a machine that they patented called the kelpinator, which slices the kelp into noodles, and then they make it into pesto, salsa verde, and also tapenade. So the thing about the Islander kelp, I know that in the other thing, the sustainability of it, Rory Morrison, who has the North Coast Smokehouse outside in Ballycastle, he does smoked salmon. So he gives Islander kelp his salmon carcasses, and they in turn give him their dulse. So there's no money changes hands, and then he smokes the dulse. Again, another great product. But I think when Kate was one of the 3 finalists in the BBC Radio 4 food programmes, Food and Farming Awards, I think it was about 4 years ago. And John Vincent, who's the CEO of Leon, the food chain, he described their business as organic, progressive, and retrograde all at one, and in a symbiotic nature with the seas around them. And I think that applies to a lot of our businesses up on the North Coast and throughout Northern Ireland. You know, they're progressive and yet they're retrograde. And so we look at experiences now that would apply to this. So you have fishing, you have butchery, you have the baking, cooking, tastings, drink tastings. And I think with the aftermath of COVID, this is more and more, has become more important. People want experiences. We've all been locked in for so long. If you can move on to the next one, sorry, Orla. This is our Sheminer, just a image of their bread. But they're now collaborating with Claire McQuillan from Feasting on Wheats to do a coastal foraging tour, and then they bring the food back and cook it in the restaurant in their cafe in Ballycastle. And they can't. With the thing about their experiences is, and they also do a bread making experience. It sells out within, I think, minutes. So this is, there is definitely an appetite for it. And if we move on to the next one, this is just an image from I love carrots. So this is an image. It's like this is carrots from Broider Gold, who make rapeseed oil. The meat is coppa, which is a really cheap cut of pork that I got from Seaview Farms, who do they do like regenerative farming. They're a young couple. They do rare breed pigs. Their meat is fantastic. And then I cook that in whey, which is a leftover product that I'd use to make ricotta from the farm next door to Seaview Farms. If we go on to the next one, this is Quilly House that Broider Gold, Leona Kane and Richard own. I've done supper clubs there. And I think this is a big thing up here. It's a big thing throughout Northern Ireland. It's going to show is unlocking these spaces now. People essentially in Northern Ireland are nosy. It's, you know, which is, I don't mean that from a bad point of view, because I'm pretty nosy myself. And I want to see things. I want to see places. I want to experience things that aren't normally open. And you drive past, this is outside Coleraine, road to Caherconnell, and you look up and it's lovely and think, I want to know what's happening in there. So, you know, that's the thing when you're marketing something, is just to make it really attractive. And if we move on to the next couple there, this is our small dining room in Quilly. We just really do just small private parties now. We don't open up to the public. And if we move on to the next one, so this is a thing that I did with in Fermanagh with Cathy McGovern of Wild Dining. So this was in Castle Caldwell Forest Park. So it was in September last year. Obviously, it wasn't last night. And if we move on to the next one, so this is just the table set up. That's a dessert and a nice chocolate dessert. And if we move on to the next one, I love this here. I love cooking on fire. And I think there's a big thing with this now. I mean, I just love that whole thing, that whole just cooking, and you're getting back to basics again. It's that look and that retrograde thing, and people love that. People just, you know, and I cooked on the fire for that whole dinner. And if we move on to the next one, this is Musselton Temple. Again, I did the first time the National Trust let anybody cook in this was last October, and I was honoured to be allowed to do that. When I say cooking, you're not allowed to cook in it. So I had a 1-ring induction hob and a water bath to cook for 30 people. But that's fine. You make what you can of these places. And a lot of the time when you're going into spaces like this, you can't really, you have to work with the space, and you have to be pretty respectful of it. And if we move on to the next one, this is Arthur Cottage in Cullibaggy. This is I was there on Saturday. And the next one, please, Orla. So I was there on Saturday with Tourism NI and the council there, and that was to do it was to cook for a group of tour guides from the south of Ireland. So that was it. So I have to sum up, really, you know, we have so much in this here. To talk of experiences, Causeway Lass have really tapped into this, and they're doing these catch and sea tours. They've also do a See To It, where they're picking up, we're involved with a charity called See To It, where they're picking up litter from the sea. So that's all so important. And the thing about that fire there, and you're cooking soda fires on turf, and we are quite self-deprecating in Northern Ireland, but make no mistake, everybody, from people from here, from visitors, love that. There's nothing like a soda fire cooked on turf on a griddle, and we have all these other fantastic products like our turnip, our box. I could talk about turnip for hours, but we'll not go on about that because Jarlath's going to ring the bell on me soon. But I think we need to just look at what we have here. We have a regional cuisine in Northern Ireland. We've Box Day in the north, in northwest. It's different to Box Day in Fermanagh, but the whole thing that ties us all together is this common bond. You talked about that earlier, Jarlath, and that we collaborate with each other, and we all have the same goal at the end of it, that we want to sell Northern Ireland, want to sell these experiences, and we just want to make this a really attractive place for people from here to experience, and also for our visitors.
Great. Thank you very much, Paula. That's Paula McIntyre there from Slow Food. And thank you very much, Paula. We'll take some questions at the end, no doubt. We're fortunate now to have Peter Boland, Senior Lecturer and Director for the International Travel and Tourism Management courses at the University of Ulster. So Peter, I'll let you take it away. He'll be talking to us about international trends and best practice. So take it away.
Okay, thank you, Jarlath, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all this morning to talk about these crucially important issues. Hopefully my slides are showing on the screen there.
Yep.
Okay, at the moment. What I'm going to say a little bit about this morning is just some international trends and best practice in both what we're focusing on here and perhaps in a bit of a wider context in terms of how things are moving sort of post-COVID. As well, and then bring that back full circle, if you like, to Northern Ireland here. So in terms of context, food is one of the essential ingredients of the tourist experience, if you excuse the pun there, and we've known that for a long time, of course. And as much as a third of tourist expenditure can be on food and beverage products and dining out. And in fact, more than that, if food and drink is the prime motivator for tourists to visit certain destinations and certain places in that way. It's something we place a huge emphasis on at Ulster University, both through our hospitality or culinary arts programs and so on, but even in the tourist program that I'm mostly involved with. Right from the very first year, we run a module called Food Tourism Festivals and Events with our students to embed that very strongly, regardless of what sector of tourism they may eventually go on to work in, just making sure they understand, as we're talking about today, the power of food and drink and the power of that in relation to tourism as well. In terms of that wider context of travel post-COVID, what we're sort of coming out from now, thankfully, these are some of the key issues and trends I feel that we're beginning to see. New booking behavior becoming very, very endemic in a sense. People being much more opportunistic, much more flexible, booking closer to travel time perhaps than planning too far in advance. We're seeing that coming out certainly in the international context that way. Staycations, if you like, have been our lifeblood, as we know, in the past year or two, and that's likely to still feature more heavily, at least for another year or two. Even though international travel is beginning to return, that staycation importance is, I think, here for a while and going to continue, and arguably should be something that we perhaps concentrate on more than we have done pre-COVID there. Sustainability concerns have increased, of course, newfound appreciation for nature and the environment during those lockdowns and so on in particular. That hopefully, will continue amongst many people. When they choose places to visit, when they choose certain experiences, people want to see that everything's being done and managed and controlled in a sustainable way. I guess through the more tragic side of the impact COVID has had, there'll still be a reluctance amongst many people to go anywhere that perhaps is too crowded or too congested and so on, and staying away from those over-tourism problems that we had to put up with in many destinations pre-COVID as well. Health and wellness has very much come to the fore as well. We were seeing a big growth in what we call wellness tourism up to 2019 anyway, but obviously the whole COVID situation has fueled that even more. So how we can essentially tie any of our tourism experiences into health and wellness is very important. And I think food and drink is a key one that we can use within that context very strongly. And of course, authentic experiences are key. And we've known that in tourism for some time, but again, coming out of COVID, I think that, people are prepared to pay for a very good quality, worthwhile experience in terms of what they're seeking, particularly if they see that experience as being very authentic to that place that they're visiting in that way. Of those, arguably, sustainability is the big one, and obviously one we're putting a certain concentration on today, and that's at destination level in terms maybe of the entire country that we're visiting. It's certainly at a regional level. It can be a resort or a particular site level as well, in terms of even a particular restaurant or a particular eating establishment that way. And recognizing that that's something that consumers as tourists look for these days. It's something that drives them in a sense, and they want to choose places to eat and drink that they see as, embracing that notion of sustainability that way, in terms of how they operate, in terms of where they get their food products and ingredients from, in terms of not being wasteful and so on as well. And in a wider sense, that's fallen within those wider United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that were set back in 2016, and that all industries around the world are encouraged to try and focus on and sit within those 17 SDGs, as we call them these days. I thought it perhaps useful to mention one of the very latest food and drink surveys that's just come out. That's from TripAdvisor just last month, January 2022. And according to TripAdvisor, customers and users, that was their current top 10 ranked food and drink destinations around the world, from Rome to London, Paris, Dubai, Barcelona, Madrid, Sao Paulo, New York, Bangkok, and Singapore. Now, these lists are very subjective. You look at different lists of top 10 food and drink destinations around the world from different organizations, and you'll often see some different ones in there. But I thought, since that is a very recent one, just last month, it's perhaps useful just to look at what certainly those TripAdvisor users are saying at the current time that way. And certainly, I don't think anyone can argue that many of those destinations there are well known for their food and drink in different ways. So off the back of that, really, what factors are important then, and more so what is an international visitor looking for in terms of food and drink tourism and in terms of a food and drink experience, if you like, when they engage as a tourist? And I've pulled together a number of key themes from a range of different industry perspectives around the world, a range of different sort of research on the academic side in terms of into food and drink tourism over the past 10 years. And these are the common themes really that are coming out that way. So authenticity is a huge one. Authenticity is key. Very closely linked to the next one is a sense of place. When tourists visit somewhere these days, they want that strongly connected, authentic sense of place. And one of the best ways to give them that is through our food and drink, if we do that correctly. It's also about community. It's about local connections in that sense. And tourists want to get that sense of community when they visit somewhere, particularly if we're talking internationally. They want to avail of that sense of community, those local connections. And again, no better way, arguably, than through food and drink to provide them with that. It's about sustainability. As we've said, it's about active, immersive experiences. It's about the tourist feeling involved in those aspects, and taking that even one step further. The more those visitors can feel that it's personalized to them, that it's in some way exclusive to them, they'll be even more satisfied and will be able to avail of all that important marketing and PR that we get through social media from many of them these days, and so on. So not just being an active, immersive experience, but if they feel it's some way tailored or personalized to them, then so much the better in that way. It's also, we've seen this, and certainly this has come out through COVID in particular, this whole multi-generational trip, families traveling together, several generations wanting to eat out together, and so on. And that's becoming a stronger issue perhaps than it was before, and I think something that we need to recognize and cater to as well. It's about pairing food with other interests and experiences, and realizing that we don't necessarily always, to make the most of this, have to have food and drink as the top headliner, if you like, of certain tourism experiences, but can be paired with other interests and other experiences that the tourist has. It's the importance of food imagery and media-friendly experiences with regard to food and drink. You know, who would have thought 20 years ago that the first thing we do when a plate of food's set in front of us is we take a photograph of it and we put it on the internet? But so many people do that now, of course, and something we once maybe would have laughed at has now become quite commonplace. But obviously there's a way we can use that effectively. There's an increased global culinary awareness. People are more widely traveled, as we've heard already this morning. They're much more used to trying different food and drink dishes and so on. And we have to recognize that. And you know, running through all of this, destination identity is very closely linked to food and drink. It's one of the best ways we can convey a sense of destination identity, and one of the most sustainable ways we can, you know, link destination identity is through food and drink that way. A couple of international examples, just to mention briefly, and I picked these out because they're good examples to use, I feel, and ones that I use with my own students when I'm going through some of these issues. The first one is the Basque country in northern Spain. It's an area of, you know, about half the size of Northern Ireland, actually, but with a similar sized populations, divided into a number of key provinces, including, you know, famous destinations like San Sebastian, Bilbao, Vitoria-Gasteiz, and so on. And they've been at this really in a very, very focused way from about 2010, 2011 onwards, in terms of trying to position the Basque Country region as one of the leading international food and wine destinations. And as a result of that, they now have a 40 strong membership in a sense through what they call their Justidae Gastronomica. They collaborate very well together, very strongly. They promote the region very well that way. And they tie into what they call the Basque Culinary Centre, which is an academic institution designed to help innovate and promote gastronomy and food and drink and so on throughout the region, including the involvement of a number of key influential chefs from that region as well. I'll not say too much more about that one at the moment because I want to highlight that the head of the Basque Culinary Centre is actually coming over to Northern Ireland in April, so I'll say a wee bit more about that shortly. But, you know, that is been very successful. They really get it there in that region of northern Spain. You know, they're particularly known for dishes like their pinchos and so on, their version of tapas in a sense, to a certain extent, if you like. Been very successful with their food experiences, their food tours, the kinds of food festivals and events that they run in that region. And they've been doing that very successfully, as I say, for some time now, pre-COVID. Another good example, I feel, is from Canada, the Ontario region. Their Culinary Tourism Alliance has been very successful as well. We're talking here about a much larger region, a lot more people living in that region of Canada, which borders the Great Lakes in the US. But their Culinary Tourism Alliance was established back in 2006 for similar reasons to the Basque Country that we looked at there. And they work very closely with all kinds of communities to grow food tourism by leveraging the history, the heritage, the culture behind the food and drink that makes the Ontario region unique in a sense. So again, it's, I feel, a really, really good example in the international arena where they, you know, place a strong influences on festivals and events, bridging that gap, as they call it, between the food and drink side of things and the travel industry. You know, and also the whole educational talks, classes, workshops from top chefs and so on is something that they place a very, very strong emphasis on and run on a very, very regular basis that way. And running through both of these examples, I feel the key thing is that collaboration between the different members, that notion of clusters getting together, and that sort of economy of scale, those benefits that you get from that when you embrace that and you achieve that fully that way. Bringing that back to Northern Ireland, you know, I do feel we've come a long way. By way of a quick story, by the way, that's a bowl of Thai green curry there. Why have I got a picture of Thai green curry? I'll mention that through a quick story. If I go back 20 plus years to when I taught at the Northern Ireland Hotel and Catering College, I think, Paula, you were there at the same time. Late 1990s, we got our students at one point to do quite a wide survey of all the restaurants and eating establishments around the North Coast, particularly with international visitors. And it was very interesting what they came back with. A few things that just still stick in my mind from that point. Where was all the seafood on the local menus was one question from the international visitors. Another one was, where was all the local produce and all the local dishes that represented Northern Ireland? And coming back to the image, the one quote from an international visitor that still sticks in my mind is, I didn't come to Northern Ireland to eat a Thai curry. So, you know, when it's made well, a Thai green curry can be a beautiful thing, but it doesn't really represent Northern Ireland. It doesn't really represent certainly or North Coast amongst the international visitors at that time. So we've come a long way since then. I think we've come a very long way, in fact, in relation to that. One good local example, because I have personal involvement with it, is the Linnalla craft beer brewery based out of Portrush in the North Coast. And I think that's a good example of two or three of the things that I mentioned earlier that we're seeing internationally. The importance of community. So Linnalla, I first got involved in Linnalla because it was a community project. So all the funding to set it up was raised by the local community. So it's local community funded, it's local community driven. It's local community owned in a sense. So I've been a co-owner since the beginning. I was lucky enough to be in the board of directors for a number of years as well. And every single beer is named after either a local place, a local landmark, a local story, folklore, and so on. So we try to convey that sense of place where it comes from very, very strongly. And another reason I got involved in that one was, you know, just the importance of that as a tourism product and a tourism motivator and attractor in a sense. I'd seen people coming into local pubs and local restaurants and saying, what local beers do you have? And, you know, the barman would say Guinness or Harp or even Tennant's, nothing particularly local to the North Coast region. So to me, it's a good example of really embracing that whole community spirit of something the local community can be proud of in a food and drink sense. It very strongly, I feel, conveys that sense of place. You know, I'm very pleased to say that we've won a number of awards at the likes of Blas na Heron and the UK Great Taste Awards and so on that way. And as you can see in one of the pictures, we have some celebrity food experts there supporting it very, very well at times too, in that sense. And we run, in fact, a beer and food festival every year in Portrush in October as well, which tends to be very successful that way. Now, pulling all of that together, just quickly, it is important.
Just tight on time. If you, yep. 1 minute, so Peter, if you don't mind. Yeah.
No problem, Gareth. It's all about sharing knowledge, ideas, and learning from best practice. And just to point out as I finish, at Ulster University, we're hosting a gastronomy summit in April of this year, where we're bringing together, hopefully, that global gastronomic community, as it says there, to explore and celebrate the transformative power of food, drink, and hospitality. We've got a range of great speakers. These are just some of them here, by no means all. But as you can see there, we have Jose, the director of the Basque Culinary Centre, coming. We have people coming from Italy, Peru, Ghana, as well as well-known chefs from the UK, like Michael Cain's there and so on. So we've a range of great speakers coming to that event. I would encourage everyone, if they're interested, you know, to consider coming along to that event to hear from all those world speakers just on their perspectives with regard to food and drink that way. So to finish up, it really is all about providing a good, sustainable visitor experience these days for any form of tourism. But I think we have the opportunity to channel that through our food and drink produce very, very strongly in that way. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Much appreciated. Some brilliant insights there, and you know, especially in relation to the case studies there, real eye opener in relation to the Basque Country and Ontario as well. When you think of the scalability of collaboration like that, so fantastic stuff. Thank you very much for that. So Michelle is going to come back in, guys, just to talk to us about the toolkit and the call to action there around some support as well, and we'll have a quick Q&A session. So Michelle, are you okay to do that?
Yeah, I'm going to try again.
Yeah. Okay. Always worth a shot.
Either very brave or very stupid.
Yes.
I'm just going to try and play the advert again if I can, because I think it's important. We really haven't had much chance to share it. So. Okay, great. Thanks for bearing with me on that.
Great. Something great for you all to share on your own platforms as well. Okay, Michelle, you've...
Yeah, it was really interesting, you know, listening to everybody. I think it's been a great morning. I wanted to say also that the advert's going to be back on television in March. There's going to be different themes on social media as well. So we've already had a few themes going out around landscapes, rivers, lochs, people, but we'll be pushing out more of that. And also we're looking for new content, and I wanted to show it again for that reason, because as I said, we were very constrained with the content that we could actually source during the pandemic. So hopefully we'll be on for the next year, and we'll get some new content on. I'm very excited about the Gastronomy Summit, Peter, and it was really great to hear you mention it. I think one of the things that we need to remember is sustainable food and drink experiences are here. I have to mention Taste of Ulster restaurants, which have been around for 25 years. And a key thing with Taste of Ulster is that local sourcing and seasonality is a part of the menu. Paula had mentioned our link to vegetables, and I just wanted to also pitch in about Peas Please, which is an initiative we're involved in, and it kind of is linked to the health agenda. And I think, Jarlath, another thing is the regional food groups that are in Northern Ireland. Great to hear Paula talk about Taste Causeway, but there's a range of those around. So onto the kind of the key takeaways from today. So as we've mentioned, we have developed a toolkit that is specific to sustainable food and drink experiences, and we'll be sharing that. We looked far and wide and we could find plenty of talk about sustainability, but very, very little about sustainable food and drink. So we've kind of created our own. And also then to offer out to everybody that's listening today, there's an opportunity here to pilot new experiences. So Food NI with Tourism NI are putting out an offer to you to make an application to pilot a new food and drink, sustainable food and drink experience. I promise you it is a very short application process. It's only 1.5 pages, honestly, and applications need to be in with Food NI by the 7th of March. We will do a quick turnaround on that. We'll get a response back to you by the 15th of March. And what we're looking for are sustainable food and drink experiences to be delivered by the 30th of April. We're going to offer about £200 per experience for up to 10 experiences, and that support will be paid out to the providers after their delivery. So hopefully that is a good way of people taking a little bit of a risk and trying out something new around the concept of sustainable food and drink. And happy to take any questions on that. Jarlath, and maybe back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. Some good initiatives there in relation to the toolkit and the support scheme. So guys, after hearing from everybody, thanks very much to Michelle, Gary, to Paula and to Peter. Any questions from around the floor? No rush at all, so take your time. If you have any questions, you're very, very welcome to ask them, either in the chat or in person.
I have a couple of questions here, Jarlath, even if I want to get us started, sure. Yeah. Lovely. So what plans do Food NI have to develop food tourism, and what support will be offered to suppliers of food experiences? So I think Michelle covered that a bit there with the innovation voucher. Michelle, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, well, the key thing will be the innovation voucher. We'll also look to see if we can then push out these new experiences via our website and Tourism NI's, Gary. But one thing I think that we do need is, and there's a bit of chat about it in the chat box, and it's good to see, we actually do need good photographic content to get a lot of that stuff out. Gary, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, because I know certainly the photographic content that Tourism NI are looking for tends to be slightly different from the content that we as Food NI would look for.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in on that. And can I just say a big thank you to Paula and to Jarlath and to Peter for taking time. Just back to the first point, and I think Paula has demonstrated it wonderfully, what has happened through collaboration with local authorities, through Tourism NI, to bring some of those new experiences, Paula, to life, you know, and certainly Taste Causeway have been very busy in the run-up to spring, to push out that lovely calendar. And you know, I think Michelle and the team at Food NI are keen to, as am I, from a Tourism NI perspective, we're keen now to stimulate newer experiences that are coming through. You know, we want to give, when we look around, I mean, you know, I can see a number of names here that have absolutely the most gorgeous products, but perhaps haven't really just dipped their toes yet into experiential tourism. And it is, you know, as Peter said, it's now about bridging that gap between primary producer and, you know, visitor experience provider. And I think it's almost typical of Northern Ireland, where we underestimate just how special these experiences are. The quality of the product, the produce that we have, the warmth of the people, the stories that we have to tell, and hopefully the innovation fund that Food and I have just launched, supported by Tourism and I, will help that. Content, yes, we're aware of content and gaps. And I suppose for us, it's tourism focused, it's experience led. And I'm hoping that we will have new opportunities to trial and test visitor experiences that then can sit within our Embrace a Giant Spirit framework, our Embrace a Giant Spirit marketing. And you know, that's only one way, Michelle, for us to be able to generate new content. I think someone else asked the question in and around Tourism Ireland and pushing all of that content through. And I think we're focusing today on a very different audience. I know that we've got some of our brand aligned Embrace a Giant Spirit experience providers on, and that's fantastic. But you know, I'm looking around me here, and I think now we've got more producers on the call that are interested in developing an experience. And Michelle and I and the team really look forward to having some conversations with you in the days and weeks ahead.
Lovely, thank you, Gary. Another question here. Any suggestions for food waste? Any sort of perishable food seems to be difficult to donate.
I think we're going to have to look into that one. I actually, it's something that I'm actually very conscious of. There's a lot of food goes to food banks, but if you go to food banks, you'll find there's hardly any fresh food goes to them. But maybe what we could do is we could put out put out a query to people like Fair Share and that, and see if there's anything. I wonder, is any of the other speakers any suggestions?
Well, what we're looking into at the moment in Burren is a biodigester, and that is something that converts food waste, which is unfortunately there's a huge amount of, as we even know from our own houses. It converts food waste into fertilizer. That's something that we're looking at the moment now to kind of reduce the kind of carbon footprint that's created in carting food waste out of the area. So that's something that only happened on Friday, that people put up their hands and said, we need to do this and move in it fairly quickly. So maybe that's something worth investigating at that side as well.
Thank you, Jarlath. And another query here, just how do you get suppliers to cut down on packaging?
Well, maybe, can I just say, I think my sense is that's starting to happen. You know, actually big drive by supermarkets. The suppliers we're talking to that are already supplying supermarkets are saying that they're being pushed. But I think, you know, if it's a local supplier, the best thing to do is to say to them. I've been a bit surprised. There's things that I have purchased off local companies. For example, I purchased some bacon off Kennedy Bacon and hadn't quite realised that actually the packaging was fully compostable. It looked to me like polythene. So it's good to have those conversations.
Michelle, I just think in next week's session as well, that we've tried to split the sessions, where today was more focused on tourism, visitor experiences. Next week's session then on the 28th of February is hospitality and industry led, food waste, food packaging, working with local suppliers and producers will come through really strongly on next week's session, and all of that will be consolidated into the industry toolkit. But you know, I'm looking around here at some of the businesses, particularly even the drinks companies, that have looked at sustainable and biodegradable packaging, you know, spent grains going off to local farmers. I think there's a lot of information that's, you know, sitting right here, and potentially there's power in sharing some of that. And Michelle, I know it's one of the things that Food and I are wanting to capture, are those stories in and around your green credentials, your commitment to the local community, and almost back to Jarlath, your point about doing that one pager, that environmental policy. I think that's a really good takeaway for the businesses, because I know of it and the businesses know of it, and we know of it because we're working closely together, but I don't think that the consumer yet knows it. And I think there's a huge outlet through Michelle's contacts, through local media, and through Tourism Ireland, where we need to get smarter about telling these stories. We're seeing other destinations that are doing it, but I actually think Northern Ireland can, you know, raise its head up here. And there's certainly, from my perspective, a lot that we should be proud of, and a lot that we should be sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that answers my next question, Gary, about how, if a company is sustainable, how they get that message across to their consumers. So it's exactly what you said there. Jarlath, I have a question for you on how do you ensure the destination and the website is maximised through the TI marketing campaigns and industry opportunities? Do you act on it solely as a cluster group, or is there an individual activity as well?
Well, we have a marketing coordinator, and their role is to maintain a very strong relationship with the agencies. And that means sharing content, whatever they want in terms of content, just create that access to them. And as well as that, to make sure that all profiles are up to date on the national portals. So there's a bit of give and take. If you want to kind of get from the national agency, you have to be willing to invest a bit of time as well, making sure the profile is right, and as well as that, using the hashtags all the time and sharing the national content. That's vital as well, because that shows that the trade and the agency are working hand in hand. That's what we have found over the last maybe 3 or 4 years. That's the best approach. Share and share alike, as they say.
Brilliant, thank you, Jarlath. That's all the questions I have. If anybody has any further questions, if they want to turn on their microphone or put the question into the chat.
All very quiet on a Monday. Okay. Okay, so if anybody is thinking of a question, feel free. You've heard a good deal from the speakers today, especially in relation to the toolkit there, and that support and ongoing support in relation to content there from Gary. Great insights then from abroad from Peter, which is wonderful stuff, and indeed in relation to kind of people's cultural inquisitiveness there from Paula in relation to slow food. Some wonderful insights there as well. So if there's any other questions, we're still open. We're not shutting down yet, but thank you all very much for attending. Much appreciated. Great turnout, and people stayed on for a good while, which is a good sign as well.
There's a question there about the application form. So what we'll do is Jarlath, we will send that out to all the attendees for today if we have their email, but we'll also be putting it onto our website. And if anybody needs it, can't find it, contact us, but we do intend to issue it hopefully today or tomorrow. Just another thing that I wanted to mention, it's been very interesting. Last October, our Department for Agriculture and the Environment put out consultation on a new approach to food, drink and agriculture in Northern Ireland. And they're calling it a whole systems approach. And it's actually the first time that in my career that I've seen the Department of Agriculture put out this strategy, which basically acknowledges the impact that food and drink's having on the environment, it's having on our health, and those issues of waste. So just to say to you, there's a sea change out there, away from just production at all costs, to one where people are thinking about the kind of whole system, and I think that's important, an important mindset change in government in Northern Ireland.
Absolutely, and especially when you see people involved in farming or the primary sector getting involved in hospitality, and maybe just looking at diversifying, as opposed to expanding, diversifying into other categories that might deliver more to them in the long run, and maybe interest the next generation. That's certainly something that's emerging too.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Any other questions or queries, guys? Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that, Michelle.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you all very much for joining, and hopefully you'll all be around again next week at the session, which is on the 28th, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.